Maria Sangrenta, The Curse in the Mirror. There are some stories we hear as children that never quite leave us. Whispers in school bathrooms, dares at sleepovers, and rumors from older siblings, each designed to test our bravery. But what if one of those stories wasn't just a tale? What if the chant you joked about in front of the mirror actually worked? In the heart of Brazil, buried beneath layers of superstition and silence, lies a name that still makes children hesitate before looking into a mirror at night. Maria Sangrenta. She is not just a ghost, she is a scream trapped between this world and the next, a reflection that remembers, a wound that bleeds through time. And when you call her, she comes. This is not the version they told you in whispers. This is the real story. The one passed down by the only survivor of an event so terrifying, the police sealed the records. The one hidden in the diary pages of a girl who vanished without a trace. The one that begins with a dare and ends with blood on the tiles. So if you're brave enough, listen closely. But don't say her name out loud. Not 3 times. Not even once. Welcome to the true horror behind the legend. Maria Sangrenta is waiting. Chapter 1. The Dare That Shouldn't Have Happened. The fluorescent light flickered above the bathroom mirror like it had something to say. Every few seconds it hummed louder, buzzed and sputtered in protest. The school janitor, Seu Roberto, had been meaning to fix it for weeks. But every time he brought it up, the principal just waved it off. It's just a light, not a crisis. If only they knew what kind of shadows thrive in flickers. Bento School was old. Built in the 1950s, it had that uncanny scent of chalk, mildew and forgotten time. The paint peeled in strips like dead skin, and the tile floors were cracked in a spiderweb of accidents no one could remember. Still, for most students it was home, familiar, predictable. But for Isadora, that place was already haunted long before Maria Sangrenta ever arrived. Isadora Lima had just turned 15. Her hair was dark and thick, usually pulled into a tight braid. She wasn't unpopular, just invisible. A quiet girl who sat in the middle row, handed in homework on time, and walked home alone. Her mother, Donna Eliza, was deeply religious and ran a small hair salon out of their home. Her father, no one really knew much about him, and Isadora never talked about it. It all started with a dare, a stupid dare. Luana, the class loudmouth with too much eyeliner and too little empathy, had heard about it from her cousin who lived in Recife. "It's not just a joke, you guys," she insisted, eyes wide with excitement. "If you do it right, she appears. They say she was a girl from back in the day, killed during a surgery gone wrong. Some say she was buried alive. Others say she cursed the doctor and anyone who looked into her mirror after midnight." "Sure," said Lucas, snorting, "and my grandma's a vampire." But Luana wasn't done. "Swear to God, my cousin's friend's sister did it. After that, she started seeing things in mirrors, like her own reflection smiling when she wasn't. Scratches on her arms. And, get this, she couldn't sleep without the lights on. Eventually they moved out of the apartment. Said it was cursed. Did they try calling Ghostbusters?" Lucas laughed again, but the room didn't echo with much support. Some of the other students were quiet, curious. Then Luana's eyes landed on Isadora. "You," she said with a smirk, "you're always so serious. Bet you're too scared to try it." Isadora blinked. "Try what?" "The ritual. Tonight. After school." Isadora's stomach tightened. "You're not serious." "Scaredy cat," Luana cooed, and the others chuckled. "I'm not scared," Isadora said, a little too fast. Luana leaned in, her voice low and sharp. "Then prove it." Luana had a certain flair for fear. She knew how to twist a story just enough to make people listen. Her eyes gleamed whenever she had an audience, and her favorite place to tell stories was the courtyard behind the cafeteria, right next to the rusted water tank that everyone swore was haunted. That Thursday afternoon, the sun had begun its slow descent, casting long shadows through the cracked concrete of São Bento School. Students were gathered in small groups, finishing snacks, trading gossip, or mindlessly scrolling through their phones. Luana stood on one of the benches, surrounded by a semicircle of curious faces. "It really happened," she said, her voice loud and dramatic. In Recife, a girl dared to say it. She lit a single candle, she looked in the mirror and said the words 3 times, and then she paused. "What?" someone asked. Luana leaned forward. Then she screamed so loudly the neighbors came running. They found her in the bathroom, passed out with blood coming from her ears, and the mirror, it was cracked, like someone had punched it from the inside. Gasps and murmurs erupted from the group. Isadora, who had been sitting alone nearby, barely listening, looked up just in time to see Luana's eyes find her. "You probably don't believe me," Luana said, hopping down from the bench and walking toward her. "But I bet you're curious, right? You want to know if it's true?" Isadora hesitated. "Not really." "Come on," Luana said, flipping her long hair over her shoulder. "You're always so serious. You're not scared of anything, are you?" Isadora didn't respond, which was answer enough. "Thought so," Luana smirked. "Let's make it official. After school, you do the ritual, prove to everyone it's all just a myth." "What ritual?" Isadora asked, now genuinely engaged. Luana's eyes lit up. She loved explaining this part. "You go into a bathroom, alone, with a mirror. The lights must be off. You stand still, and you chant slowly, 'Maria Sangrenta, ven a mi buscar,' 3 times, then you wait." "For what?" "For her." There was a pause. Then laughter from a few boys behind them. "This is dumb," said Lucas. "You're gonna get her killed over some playground ghost." Luana turned to him. "Don't believe it? Then why don't you do it?" Lucas shrugged. "Because I have better things to do than talk to imaginary ghosts." But Isadora felt the heat of the challenge growing. The group had shifted their attention. Now they were all watching her, waiting. "If I do it," she said finally, "then it's over. No more dares, no more games." Luana grinned. "Deal." That night, the air in São Bento School felt thicker, heavier. Isadora stayed behind after the last bell, pretending to organize her locker. She watched as the crowd thinned, as laughter faded down the halls, as teachers gathered their things and disappeared into the evening. At last, the halls were silent. She walked toward the 2nd floor, where the forbidden bathroom waited. It had been closed off months ago. Some pipe issue, she vaguely recalled. But she knew the door wasn't locked. No one had gotten around to fixing it. The school didn't have the funds, and the principal had bigger things to worry about. The hallway felt colder than it should have. Her sneakers echoed on the floor, each step a metronome counting down to something inevitable. When she reached the door, she paused. Her hand hovered near the knob. A strange sensation rose in her throat, not fear exactly, but something colder, dread, maybe. She opened the door. Dust danced in the air, illuminated by the weak sunlight coming through a cracked window. The mirror loomed above the sink, tall and slightly tilted. It was framed in peeling silver, the top right corner fractured like a spider web. Isadora stepped inside, heart pounding. She turned off the lights. The room sank into shadow. Only a sliver of light remained from the hall, spilling through the open door behind her. She considered closing it but couldn't bring herself to do it. She took a deep breath, looked into the mirror. Maria Sangrenta, ven a me buscar. Her voice was steady. Maria Sangrenta, ven a me buscar. The light flickered. Maria Sangrenta, Venha me buscar. Silence. Nothing happened. She stood there, eyes locked on her reflection, waiting for something, anything. A creak, a noise, a whisper, but the silence stretched on. Her heart began to slow. She almost laughed. Then she blinked. Her reflection didn't. Isadora froze. There it was, just for a moment, but she saw it. Her own eyes in the mirror, wide and watching, had failed to blink when she did. Her breath caught in her throat, and for several seconds she stood motionless, afraid to move, afraid to look away. She blinked again. This time her reflection followed. Was it her imagination? The tension in the air grew thick. Every hair on her body stood on end, and she could hear the blood rushing in her ears. She looked behind her, the door still ajar, light from the hallway painting a crooked line across the tiled floor. She turned, back to the mirror. Her reflection seemed fine now, nothing out of place, until it smiled. Her own lips hadn't moved. The reflection smiled, a crooked, knowing smile, almost mocking. Isadora stumbled backward, hitting the stall door behind. "Her," she gasped, but the sound barely registered over the ringing in her ears. She scrambled toward the door. Her hand hit the handle and twisted. It moved freely, but the door wouldn't budge. Something held it shut, not locked, but firm. As if someone on the other side pressed against it with gentle, unyielding force. "Let me out," she whispered, voice shaky. No answer. Drip, drip, drip. Her eyes shot toward the sink. The faucet was dry, but the mirror, a thin line of red leaked down its center as if it were bleeding from within. The streak traveled slowly, dividing her face in half. Isadora screamed. It wasn't a loud scream, more a choked cry from deep in her throat. She pounded on the door with her fists, panic taking over. The lights above flickered once, twice. Then everything went black. She didn't remember getting out. One moment she was trapped in darkness, the next she was stumbling into the hallway, gasping, her hands trembling. The door had swung open behind her as if it had never been closed. The hallway was still, too still, not a sound in the entire school. She glanced at her phone. 6:51 p.m. Less than 10 minutes had passed, but it felt like hours. Her palms were damp. She looked at them. No blood. She ran out of the building, past the security guard's booth, into the street. She didn't stop until she was nearly home. Breath hitching, her legs aching. When she finally reached her front gate, she paused. Her reflection in the small glass pane of the door met her gaze. It blinked when she did. And yet, she felt it again. That wrongness, that pressure in her chest. Like something was watching her from just behind the glass. She went inside without a word. Upstairs, locked the bathroom door, locked her bedroom door, closed every curtain. She stood in front of the mirror in her room and forced herself to look. Just her face, pale, eyes wide, lips colorless. No blood, no crack, no smile. But just as she turned away, she saw it again, a smudge on the glass, like a handprint from the inside. That night, Isadora barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the mirror, the crack running down its surface, the blood-like smear, the reflection that smiled. Worse than the images was the feeling, like something had attached itself to her, like a shadow clinging to her back. She kept her bedside lamp on the entire night, and even then, her eyes darted toward the mirror every few minutes. In the morning, she found herself staring at her own face again. Pale skin, tired eyes, but otherwise normal. Maybe it was all stress. Maybe the dare, the pressure, the creepy setting, it had messed with her mind. That's what she tried to believe. But deep down, she didn't. The handprint was gone. At breakfast, her mother was humming in the kitchen, as if nothing had happened. The sound of the blender, the clinking of dishes, it all felt so absurdly normal. Isadora forced down a few bites of toast before pushing her plate away. "You okay, Isa?" "Hurty?" Mother asked. "Just tired. Didn't sleep well." "Nightmares again?" Isadora nodded. Her mother sighed. "We should talk to Padre Mateus." "No, I'm fine. Really." But she wasn't. At school, everything felt off. The hallway lights buzzed louder than usual. The air in the stairwell was colder. Her classmates' voices seemed far away, like she was hearing them through water. And when she passed the second-floor bathroom, she stopped involuntarily. The door was closed again, padlocked. Her stomach dropped. She walked faster. During history class, she caught her reflection in the window beside her desk. It was a cloudy day, the light dim enough for the glass to reflect her faint outline. She turned to look. Her reflection was already staring, not glancing, not moving at the same time, just staring. She blinked. It blinked back, this time in sync. She looked around. No one else seemed to notice. Later that afternoon, she was washing her hands in the girls' bathroom when she heard it. A faint whisper, right next to her ear. "You called me." She jerked her head around. The stool behind her was empty. She ran out without drying her hands. That evening, she stared at her phone, debating whether to text Luana. But what could she say? That the story might be real? That something had followed her home before she could make a decision? Her phone vibrated. "Luana, did you see anything?" "Be honest." Isadora hesitated. "Isadora, I think I saw her." There was a pause. Then Luana, "Me too." Isadora's stomach turned. Her hands trembled. "Isadora, what do you mean?" "Luana, I didn't tell you everything. I did the ritual last year. It took a while, but once you see her, she doesn't stop coming." Isadora stared at the screen. Her pulse thudded. "Isadora, what does she want?" "Luana, I don't know, but she's in the mirrors, and she's getting closer." The next day, rumors spread before Isadora even made it to class. Someone said the janitor had quit. Someone else said he found blood smeared across the second-floor bathroom mirror. Another claimed they'd seen Luana outside the school gates early that morning, her eyes sunken, her hair tangled, muttering something under her breath. She hadn't come to class. Isadora kept her head down. But the whispers followed her, and so did the mirrors. In the science lab, she caught a reflection that didn't match the students around her. A girl in a white dress at the far corner of the lab table, who wasn't really there. In the music room, she swore she heard breathing behind her while she tuned her guitar. The mirror on the wall, used for posture practice, seemed fogged up. She hadn't touched it. During recess, she found Luana behind the gym, smoking a cigarette with trembling hands. "You look like hell," Isadora said quietly. Luana didn't laugh. She didn't even look surprised to see her. "She's angry," Luana said, voice hollow. "At what?" "Us. Being called, mocked, dared." Isadora sat beside her on the low concrete step. "Why didn't you tell me you'd done it before?" "Because I thought it wouldn't work for you. Thought maybe it was all in my head. But the more you believe, the more real she gets." Luana turned to her. "Have you looked in your mirror today?" Isadora shook her head. "Don't. Not alone. Not until you know how to block her." "Block her?" Luana nodded slowly. "My cousin went to a woman who works with herbs and prayer. She said mirrors are doorways. You can close them." "How?" "Salt. Oil. Faith." Isadora felt like she was slipping into another world, one where nothing made sense, and every answer led to a darker question. That night, she taped a blanket over her bedroom mirror. She poured salt across the windowsill. She didn't know what she was doing, but doing something felt better than doing nothing. Then, just after midnight, She woke up to the sound of glass cracking. Slow, sharp, like ice under pressure. She turned on her lamp and looked around. The mirror was still covered, but the full-length vanity on the closet door, the one she had forgotten about, wasn't. She pulled herself out of bed, heart thumping. Cautiously, she stepped toward it. The crack was fresh, a jagged line from the top down the middle. Her own face was distorted by it. She reached out to touch the crack, and that's when she saw it. A single red fingerprint on the inside of the glass. The next morning, Isadora awoke to pain. It was subtle, at first, an itching on her arm. She rubbed it, still half asleep, then blinked against the light slipping through her blinds. She pulled back her sleeve. 3 faint lines, thin, parallel, like claw marks. She stared. Her heart thudded. She hadn't scratched herself. She would have remembered. She checked the sheets. Nothing. No broken nails, no splinters. She touched the marks again. They stung now. Raw. By the time she got to school, the marks were worse. Redder. Angrier. In the bathroom, she rolled up her sleeve again and found more. On her shoulder, her ribs. Like something had reached through the mirror and raked her with invisible fingers. She didn't tell anyone, but she saw Luana in the hallway. Their eyes met. Luana nodded once, then turned away. She didn't need to ask. It was happening to her, too. At home, Isadora avoided mirrors. She turned them to the wall, covered them with towels, refused to look at the shiny back of her spoon, even the reflection in her phone screen. But reflections are everywhere, in the puddle outside, in the glass of a picture frame, even in someone else's sunglasses. And every time she saw the same thing, her face. But off. Always off. Like the girl in the mirror was waiting for the real Isadora to let her in. The voice came again that night. "You called me. Now you're mine." She shot out of bed, turned on every light, and screamed for her mother. When Donna, Eliza, came running, Isadora was curled in the corner, shaking. There was no one in the room, but the salt she had poured earlier. It was smeared, as if a hand had dragged through it. She began to lose time. An hour would pass and she wouldn't remember what she did. Her notebook showed drawings she didn't recall making. Dark spirals, blood-red eyes, mirrors cracking open. She stopped eating, stopped talking. And on Friday she fainted in the hallway. They said it was stress, overwork, a virus. But when they pulled up her shirt to check for bruises, they found scratches all over her back, perfectly straight, perfectly spaced, like fingers. Chapter 2. What the Mirror Saw. By Monday, Isadora was no longer the same girl. The change was subtle to some, but for those who paid attention, it was unmistakable. She was quieter. Not the normal quiet, the kind she always carried like a shield, but a watchful, haunted stillness. Her eyes darted too often, especially when she passed windows or polished surfaces. She no longer flinched at sudden noises. She simply froze, as if listening for something more sinister than sound. Her teachers grew concerned. Her grades began to slip. In math class, she turned in a worksheet covered in drawings instead of answers, spirals, broken glass patterns, and small red-eyed faces that bled ink into the margins. When asked if she was feeling well, she simply nodded and returned to her notebook, hollow-eyed. At home, her mother grew more frantic. "Você está me assustando, filha," Donna Eliza said, one evening, holding her daughter's pale face in her hands. "What's happening to you?" Isadora looked past her, at the microwave door's reflective surface, at the sliding glass door leading to the backyard, at her own fractured expression staring back. I think she's inside the mirror," she whispered. Her mother crossed herself quickly. What are you talking about? What mirror? But Isadora said nothing more. At school she tried to pretend, tried to sit with her classmates at lunch, tried to laugh when Luana made a joke. But even Luana's bravado had begun to crack. Her makeup was smudged more often now. She wore long sleeves every day. She avoided her own reflection too. "Have you seen her again?" Luana asked in a hushed voice behind the bleachers. Isadora nodded. "Not just in mirrors anymore." Luana froze. "What do you mean?" "Reflections are how she gets through, but once she's near you, she doesn't need the mirror, not all the time." Luana looked like she might cry. Isadora leaned in closer. "Sometimes I see her in my dreams. Sometimes, when I wake up, the mirror isn't cracked, but my body is. We have to do something," Luana whispered. "We can't keep living like this." "Then help me find out who she was. The real Maria Sangrenta." Luana blinked. "You want to dig into her past? That's how horror movies start." Isadora's voice was cold. "We're already in one." The school library had always felt like a safe place. Rows of aging shelves, the constant whisper of ceiling fans, the faint smell of yellowed pages. But now, even this sanctuary had lost its comfort. Every reflective surface, every framed portrait, laminated book cover, polished desk, held a hint of danger. Isadora walked past the circulation desk with purpose. Luana followed, more reluctant, constantly glancing over her shoulder as if someone or something was tailing them. "You're sure it's here?" Luana whispered. "That's what the janitor said before he quit," Isadora murmured. "Old archives, backroom storage." They slipped behind a partially closed maintenance door and descended a narrow staircase to the basement. Few students knew about this part of the school. Fewer still had any reason to go there. The room smelled of damp paper and rust. Rows of metal cabinets lined the walls. Some were labeled Student Records 1980-1995. Others had peeling tape and smudged writing. Isadora searched until she found one marked Incidents, Confidential. "This is it. Help me open it." The drawers screeched as they slid out, protesting years of neglect. Inside were dusty folders, manila and curling. Many were water-damaged. Luana rifled through them. "There's a lot here. Accidents, expulsions, even a fire." "Keep looking," Isadora urged, and then she saw it. A file, misfiled under M. No last name. Just Maria. She opened it. The folder contained 2 items, a grainy black and white photograph and a single crumpled report. The photo showed a girl, young, maybe 14, long dark hair, a face with deep-set eyes and a faint smile. Faded ink scrawled on the back, Maria dos Santos, deceased, 1963, Luana read over her shoulder. Student death during procedure, bleeding. No family claimed the body. Buried without rites. Procedure? It says here she fainted during a routine health checkup. They tried to revive her. It got worse. She bled out. Isadora's hand shook. Where was it? Infirmary. But that part of the school was shut down after the flood in '73. A silence passed between them. "There's something else," Luana said, pulling another paper from inside the file. It was a disciplinary note. Maria had been caught talking to herself in mirrors, carving names into the desks, writing strange prayers on the chalkboards. "They thought she was mentally ill," Luana murmured. "Or cursed," Isadora said. The basement light flickered, then died. They both screamed. In the pitch black, a mirror fell from a shelf and shattered on the ground. The next morning, Isadora waited near the church steps. She'd found out where Seu Roberto, the former janitor, volunteered, sweeping the chapel's back hall and lighting candles during morning prayers. She spotted him pushing a broom slowly, his back hunched, face gaunt like he hadn't slept in days. "Seu Roberto," she called. He turned, startled. "Você? What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. About the mirror, about Maria. The color drained from his face. He looked around nervously and motioned for her to follow him to a bench under the shadow of a tree. You shouldn't be asking about that, he said. It's not safe. Please. I already started something. I need to understand it. He exhaled. I've seen things at that school, things I wish I could forget. But the worst was that bathroom. Isadora leaned in. What did you see? I cleaned up after the girl who found the mirror cracked. In 1982, no one ever told her parents what really happened, just that she had a breakdown. But I saw the walls, Menina. They were bleeding. Isadora shuddered. Every time I tried to clean that mirror, the water turned red. Sometimes I'd see a girl behind me, just for a second. I thought I was losing my mind. Until one day, I didn't see my reflection at all. Only hers. He gripped her wrist suddenly, his grip stronger than she expected. Did you call her? She nodded slowly, his eyes filled with tears. Then you need to stop. Burn the mirror if you can. Cover every reflective surface. Don't let her look back at you. That's how she feeds, through your fear, through your eyes. Isadora's voice shook. What happens if I see her outside the mirror? So Roberto's expression darkened. Then she's almost through. He stood abruptly and walked away, leaving her sitting on the bench, heart racing. That night, she covered every mirror in the house. But when she turned off the light to sleep, she saw her reflection, faint and grinning, on the inside of her closet door. She hadn't covered that one. Luana didn't want to go back to the basement. Not after what had happened the last time, the broken mirror, the sudden darkness, the feeling of cold breath on the back of her neck. But Isadora insisted. There was more to find, more to know. This time, they came prepared. Flashlights, gloves, and salt. The storage room was unchanged, as though it had been waiting for them. A fine layer of dust coated the floor again, despite no windows, no airflow. The broken mirror was still there, its shards glinting like teeth. We need to know why she's still here, Isadora said, and what she wants. They returned to the cabinet, marked incidents, confidential, and searched again. Isadora found an envelope tucked behind one of the drawers, nearly missed. It was brittle and sealed with red wax. She opened it carefully. Inside was a faded letter, dated 1964. To whom it may. Concern, if this reaches you, then the spirit is not yet at rest. Her name was Maria dos Santos. She died unjustly, accused of witchcraft by frightened men. She was not evil, but she died with hate in her heart, buried without prayer, and cursed to remain. If she has returned, she must be freed. Her spirit is bound to glass. Mirrors are her prison and her passage. Do not try to banish her. She must be understood. Pray for her. Find the one who cursed her. Only then will her pain end. Luana's voice trembled. They blamed her for something. They thought she was a witch. She wasn't, Isadora said. She was just different, lonely, hurt. And now she's lashing out. They sat in silence for a long time. What do we do now? Luana finally asked. Isadora looked at the mirror shards. We find out who cursed her, and we end it. But neither of them noticed the shadow forming behind them, long, feminine, dripping. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees, and the smallest shard on the floor began to bleed. It started with the classroom windows. Isadora sat beside one during Portuguese literature, doodling absent-mindedly in her notebook while Professor Marina discussed Machado de Assis. Outside, the sky was grey, heavy with storm clouds. Her eyes wandered to the glass pane, and she saw her reflection staring back. Only it wasn't hers. It wore her face, yes, her clothes. But the expression was wrong, too still, too calm. And the eyes, they didn't move with hers. They were locked onto her like a predator sizing up prey. She blinked and looked away. When she glanced back again, the reflection was gone. Later, in the cafeteria, she passed a wall of glass. For a second, she caught sight of herself walking, and another version of herself standing still. She froze. Luana noticed. Again? Isadora nodded slowly. They're not matching anymore. It's like she's learning, getting better at pretending to be me. Luana's hands trembled as she pulled out a small plastic bottle from her bag. Holy water. I got it from the chapel downtown. Isadora took it gratefully. I'll try anything. They spent the next hour in the girls' bathroom, drawing symbols they had researched online. Protection runes, Latin prayers, even crude salt circles around the sink. But when Isadora looked into the mirror again, the blood returned. Not dripping, this time etched a message, carved from the inside of the glass. Let me in. Luana gasped. She's getting stronger. The lights flickered. The stall door behind them creaked. Isadora turned slowly to the mirror. Her reflection was smiling, now wide, lips too red, eyes too black, and her own face. Blank. That night, Isadora couldn't sleep. Every time her eyes closed, she saw the message again. Let me in. Not written, not drawn, but carved. Deep, like fingernails on glass. She tossed and turned until 3:12 a.m., then gave up. She turned on her lamp, crept to the bathroom and checked the mirror. It was clean. No blood. No cracks. Still, she reached for the holy water Luana had given her. She sprinkled it across the mirror, whispering a prayer. Then, she turned on the tap. Drip, 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 thicker than water, red. Her breath caught. She backed away as the water turned crimson, spiraling down the drain like liquid rubies. She reached for the light switch. It didn't work. The shadows stretched long across the tiles. Behind her, something moved. She turned, slowly. Nothing. But when she looked back to the sink, it was full of blood, and inside it, something floating, a tooth, just one, small, white, childlike. She screamed. Footsteps thundered down the hall. Her mother burst through the door, flipping the switch. Light flooded the room. The sink was empty. No blood, no tooth. But Isadora knew what she saw. She knew what it meant. She wasn't just being haunted anymore. She was being harvested. Chapter 3. The second ritual. Luana didn't show up to school for 3 days. On the 4th, she returned. But she wasn't the same. Isadora spotted her standing alone near the edge of the courtyard, arms crossed tightly over her chest, staring at the ground. Her once loud voice was silent, her wild expressions now carved into a haunted stillness. When Isadora approached, Luana barely looked up. I thought she had you, Isadora said softly. Luana's lips barely moved. She almost did. What happened? She came through, in my house, through the hallway mirror. My mom thought I was sleepwalking, but I wasn't. I was somewhere else. Somewhere cold. Isadora's skin prickled. You saw her outside the glass? Luana nodded. She stood at the foot of my bed all night, and in the morning she was gone, but not really. She never leaves now. A long silence stretched between them. We need to stop this, Isadora whispered. We need to send her back. Luana laughed, a short, broken sound. You don't send Maria anywhere. You just pray she stays where she is. But Isadora had already made up her mind. I'm going to do the ritual again, the right way, to trap her, or talk to her, or something. Luana gripped her arm. Don't. You don't understand. She doesn't want to talk. She wants to replace you. Isadora didn't answer. She looked at her reflection in the cafeteria window. This time, it blinked a second too late, and smiled. The night before the second, Ritual, Isadora dreamt of drowning. She stood waist-deep in a dark pool of ink. All around her reflections drifted by, her own face, Maria's face, and dozens of others she couldn't name. Their mouths moved in silent screams, eyes bleeding. Darkness. Then, one by one, the reflections began to sink, dragging her with them. She woke, gasping. Sweat soaked her sheets. Her back stung. She reached behind and felt it. 3 new scratches, hot and raised. She stumbled to the bathroom, not daring to look into the mirror as she grabbed the medical kit. But the mirror had its own plans. As soon as she flipped on the light, the mirror was waiting. This time it was not her reflection at all. It was Maria, covered in blood. Hair matted, eyes hollow, smiling wider than humanly possible. Behind her, faint outlines of other people flickered in the glass. Young girls, some in school uniforms, some in nightgowns, all of them mouthing something over and over. Isadora forced herself to look away. She slammed the mirror door shut and turned on the shower to drown out her heartbeat. The next morning, she had bruises on her legs and a bloodstain on her pillow. None of it made sense. But the message did. The ritual wasn't over. The door was no longer padlocked. Isadora stood outside the second-floor girls' bathroom, her hand trembling as it hovered over the knob. The sign that once read, "Do not enter," was missing. The tape peeled away. It was as if the school had never sealed it at all. She turned to Luana, who stood behind her with a small tin of salt and a bottle of holy water tucked inside her backpack. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Luana whispered. "No," Isadora replied, "but I think I have to." She opened the door. It creaked the same way it had weeks before, but the air inside was different now, heavier, like the space remembered her. The tiles were stained. The mirror, no longer cracked, was pristine. Too pristine, as though it had been replaced. But she knew. Somehow it was the same. She stepped inside and closed the door. Luana stayed outside, chanting softly in Latin, the way the article had instructed. Isadora uncapped the holy water and circled the room, sprinkling droplets as she moved. She placed a line of salt in front of the mirror and lit a single white candle on the edge of the sink. She looked at her reflection. Maria Sangrenta, venha mi buscar. The flame flickered. Maria Sangrenta, venha mi buscar. The air went cold. Maria Sangrenta, venha mi buscar. Silence. Then, the sound of dripping. She turned to the faucet. Off. The dripping came from the ceiling. She looked up. Dark red liquid dripped from the light fixture above, landing in slow, rhythmic splashes on the edge of the sink. The candle blew out on its own, and in the mirror, Maria was there. This time, not as a reflection. She was reaching out. Next day, Lucas didn't show up. At first, no one thought much of it. People missed class all the time. But by the afternoon, word began to spread. His parents hadn't seen him since the night before. By morning, his face was on posters. Isadora missing. Please call. The school buzzed with nervous energy. Some whispered he had run away. Others claimed he was expelled in secret. But Isadora knew better. He'd been in the hallway, near the mirror. She remembered it clearly. The day before, she'd seen him stop and glance into the glass of the trophy case, his face going pale. He'd backed away quickly, muttering to himself. Now he was gone. She sat alone in the library after lunch, staring at the list of ritual variations she and Luana had copied into a journal. She didn't hear Luana arrive until she placed her hand on Isadora's shoulder. "He's the third," Luana whispered. "What do you mean?" "Third one from the school, the girl from 2008, the boy in 1995. Now Lucas." All 3 vanished without a trace, all within weeks of a mirror-related report. Isadora shut the journal. Her hands trembled. She's taking them. She's claiming them. They looked at one another, and then, as if on cue, every computer screen in the library flickered. The screens went black. Then one by one, a face appeared. Not Lucas, not Maria, but Isadora, smiling wide, eyes bleeding. Then, darkness, the other lights went out, and from the hallway they heard the echo of footsteps, but no one was there. The school replaced the broken mirrors after Lucas disappeared. Not just the bathroom ones, every single reflective surface that had been vandalized or cracked in the past month. The principal said it was for student morale, but Isadora knew the truth. They were trying to erase Maria's reach, but they didn't understand. It wasn't about the mirrors themselves, it was about the reflections they held. The new mirror in the second-floor bathroom was flawless, too flawless. The glass seemed deeper somehow, like a pool that didn't reflect but pulled you in. When Isadora stood before it again, alone this time, she could feel the tension in her chest return. She leaned in. Her reflection leaned closer too, but with a delay. Not enough for the eye to catch unless you were looking for it. She reached out, touching the surface. Cold. Colder than it should have been. And then the reflection blinked. Twice. She only blinked once. The lights buzzed overhead. From the corner of the mirror, something moved. Another reflection within the reflection. A second mirror. She stepped back. The reflection didn't. It stayed, watching, and then it moved to the side, on its own, revealing not her bedroom or the bathroom behind her, but a long hallway. One lined with dozens of mirrors. Each held a different version of her. Some crying, some bleeding, some smiling, and at the end of that hallway, in the center of the final mirror, Maria. She raised her hand and pointed straight at Isadora. The hallway was silent when Isadora walked toward the second floor. Bathroom again, candle, salt, and journal clutched in her hands. She no longer feared the cold in her chest. She no longer flinched at the flicker of lights. She was ready. She entered the bathroom without hesitation. This time the mirror didn't shimmer. It waited, quiet, patient. She placed the candle down, drew a circle of salt, and opened the journal to the ritual notes. One variation stood out, a version from an old nun's scribbled testimony, translated from Latin, that claimed it could contain a spirit long enough for negotiation or judgment. She began the incantation. Maria Sangrenta, venha me buscar. Estou pronta. The mirror fogged from the inside. She lit the candle. Maria Sangrenta, venha me buscar. A crack spread across the surface. Maria Sangrenta, venha me buscar. A breath swept through the room. The flame flickered, then flared. The mirror rippled, and then it opened, not shattered, not exploded, opened, like a mouth. Isadora stepped forward. She didn't know what force made her do it, curiosity, defiance, or something deeper, but she touched the glass, and it accepted her. Her hand sank in, then her arm, then everything. On the other side, the world was shadow and silver and screaming silence, and Maria was waiting. Chapter 4. The Other Side. The first thing Isadora felt was cold. Not the kind of cold that raises goosebumps or makes your breath fog, but something deeper, like the absence of breath, of warmth, of life. It crawled through her skin and sank into her bones. The second thing she noticed was the silence. Absolute, crushing silence, not even the sound of her own breathing. She opened her eyes. The world on the other side of the mirror was not like hers. Everything looked like it had been drained of color. Shades of gray, silver, and deep black surrounded her, like she'd stepped into a charcoal sketch. The walls stretched, higher than they should have, the corners curved unnaturally, and the ceiling arched like the inside of a crypt. Her footsteps made no sound on the obsidian-tiled floor. Mirrors lined the hallway, each one tall, ancient, framed in ornate silver that pulsed faintly like a living vein. But the glass wasn't reflective. It shimmered, showing moving images like windows into other realities. In one, she saw herself sleeping. In another, she saw Luana crying into her hands at the church steps. Another showed the hallway at São Bento, empty, save for a pale figure slowly approaching the camera. She looked away. Isadora walked forward, unsure if her feet even touched the ground. With each step, the walls seemed to lean in closer, the air growing heavier, pressing against her chest. Then she saw it. A door, carved into the center of the longest wall, covered in symbols she didn't recognize, but that filled her with dread. Symbols that moved when she tried to focus on them, and beside the door, Maria. She wasn't in the mirror this time. She stood there, tall, thin, her long, tangled black hair dripping with a crimson sheen. Her dress was soaked in blood. Her eyes were entirely black, hollow pits that threatened to pull Isadora inside. But she didn't move. She watched, waiting. Isadora's voice trembled. "What do you want from me?" No answer. The door creaked open on its own. Maria stepped aside, and Isadora, heart pounding, mind racing, stepped through. The room beyond the door defied logic. It stretched infinitely in all directions, yet felt suffocatingly close. Walls twisted inward like a massive spiral, converging at a single point far in the distance, an altar carved from black stone, pulsing with dim red veins. The sky above, if it could be called a sky, was a swirling mass of storm clouds and mirror shards, each fragment reflecting a different nightmare. And scattered around the altar were mirrors, hundreds of them, standing like tombstones. Some tall and thin, others wide and warped. They buzzed faintly, the way dying light bulbs do. Within each one, a trapped soul. Isadora walked slowly, cautiously, her eyes flicking from face to face inside the mirrors. Some screamed silently, some wept, a few simply stared, broken and empty. Maria followed her, not walking, floating, gliding. She was silent, her face expressionless, but her eyes never left Isadora, watching, studying, waiting. When they reached the altar, Isadora stopped. "Are these the others? The ones you took?" Maria tilted her head. The mirrors trembled. From the altar, a single mirror rose higher than the rest. Its frame was darker, older, jagged like bone. Isadora approached it, and inside she saw herself, but not as she was. This version of her was smiling, lips too wide, teeth too sharp, blood running from her eyes. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. A voice echoed, not spoken but planted in her mind. Maria's voice. "This is who you become, if you stay." Isadora stepped back. Her reflection in the altar mirror didn't. It stepped forward. Maria raised a hand, and the reflection screamed. The sound cracked the mirror. Isadora fell to her knees, clutching her head, pain splitting through her skull like ice. The voice came again. "They called me mad. They buried me without prayer. Now they see what I am." "What are you?" Isadora choked. "A mirror of pain." Then everything went dark. Isadora awoke to silence, but it wasn't the comforting silence of an early morning or even the eerie quiet of the mirror world. This was the silence of absence, of being nowhere and everywhere at once. She was lying on cold stone, beneath a ceiling made of cracked glass panes that shifted above her like waves. Light bled through in odd colors, green, violet, black. None of it made sense. She sat up slowly, every bone in her body aching. Around her, mirrors stood like sentinels, closer now, crowding her in a tight circle. Each mirror contained a version of her. One sobbing, one curled in a fetal position, one screaming over and over again, clawing at the glass, and in the center of the circle, just feet away, stood Maria. Isadora tried to speak, but no sound came out. Maria raised a hand. The mirrors responded. They rippled like disturbed water, and then began to pulse. With each beat, the screams grew louder. Not from Isadora. From her reflections, their mouths opened wider than humanly possible, dislocating. Their eyes bled black tears. Their voices crashed into one another like shattered plates rising in. A shriek that threatened to tear her mind apart. Isadora dropped to the floor, covering her ears. But the sound wasn't in her ears, it was inside her head. Maria stepped closer, her blood-soaked gown dragging across the black stone. She knelt, gently touched Isadora's forehead. The screaming stopped. Maria leaned close and whispered. Not in words, but in memory, images flooded Isadora's mind. A young girl, alone, mocked, shunned, people calling her cursed, a mother turning away, a priest refusing to bless her, the pain of being buried alive in isolation, the rage at being forgotten. Maria had once been innocent. What remained now was only pain and vengeance. Maria pulled away. Isadora looked up, her face streaked with silent tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The mirrors dimmed. But behind Maria, a new one began to glow, brighter than the rest, and inside it wasn't a reflection of Isadora, it was Luana, trapped. Reaching out, Isadora stood, her legs weak but determined. She moved toward the glowing mirror where Luana was imprisoned. Luana's hands pounded silently against the other side of the glass, her face contorted in terror and desperation. Her lips moved, but no sound escaped. "Let her go," Isadora said, turning to Maria. Maria stood still, expression unreadable, eyes like black wells that soar into Isadora's soul. "You want me?" Isadora continued. "Then take me, not her." The glass pulsed. Maria didn't respond with words. Instead, an image flickered in the mirror behind her. Isadora, standing in the middle of São Bento School's courtyard, surrounded by hundreds of students, every one of them staring at her, their eyes hollow, their mouths sewn shut. She shivered. A new mirror rose beside Maria. This one was empty, a blank slate. It seemed to hum with possibility and with threat. Maria extended her arm toward it. A voice echoed in Isadora's head. "Step in. Take her place. If I do, she goes free. Her soul, her name, her mirror, released." Isadora's breath caught in her throat. The weight of the decision crushed her chest. "You don't want justice," she whispered. "You want a cycle. Pain for pain. Fear for fear." Maria said nothing. But behind her, the mirror containing Luana flickered, beginning to fracture. "If I do this," Isadora said, "you end it. With me, no more." The ground rumbled, the reflections screamed. Maria raised both hands, and all the mirrors went still. Then she lowered her arms. The blank mirror opened, inviting. Isadora stepped toward it. 1 step. 2. The cold radiated outward, biting at her skin. As she reached the threshold, she turned and looked one last time at Luana, whose mirror now dimmed, the glass cracking outward as if releasing pressure. Maria waited, and Isadora took one more step. As Isadora crossed the threshold, a blinding white light swallowed her. For a moment, she felt weightless, unbound by gravity or thought. Then, like falling into deep water, she plunged into stillness. When the light faded, she stood not in the mirror realm, but in a memory. It looked like a simple bedroom. Pale yellow curtains, a wooden crucifix on the wall, a handmade doll resting on a blanket. She knew instinctively, this was Maria's room, and Maria was there. Not the ghostly apparition she had become, but a young girl, perhaps 12 or 13. Her face was soft, human, eyes full of wonder, not blackened void. She sat on the bed, brushing the doll's hair, humming a lullaby. Isadora stepped closer. The girl looked up and smiled, but the smile faded quickly. Footsteps echoed outside the door, a woman's voice, sharp, angry, a man's accusing, cruel. Maria clutched the doll tightly. "They think I'm cursed," she whispered. The door slammed open. A priest stood there, 2 elders flanking him. "You've brought sickness," he said coldly. "Witchcraft, blasphemy." Maria cried, "I didn't do anything." The men dragged her from the room. The scene blurred, shifted. Now Maria was in a church basement. The walls were cold stone. Candles flickered dimly. Her hands were bound, her dress torn. The priest poured holy water over her. She screamed, not in pain but in betrayal. They began the rites, not of exorcism, of damnation. "Banish the cursed," they chanted. "Seal her in glass." Isadora watched in horror as the ritual tore into Maria's soul. Her cries etched into the walls, her final breath fogging the mirror before it swallowed her. Then, blackness. Isadora collapsed. "Wendhau." She opened her eyes again. She was back at the altar. Maria stood over her, older now, hollow again. But something in her face had changed. "You were never a monster," Isadora said. "They made you one." Maria's eyes softened, just slightly. The mirrors began to crack. One by one, the souls inside released, whispering thanks, fading like smoke. Maria turned back to Isadora. She held out a hand, not to take, to lift. Isadora took Maria's hand. The moment their palms touched, the realm around them began to tremble. Mirrors shattered in a slow cascade, the shards turning into light as they dissolved. The black floor cracked beneath them, revealing a vast nothingness underneath. Stars, smoke, memory, and silence. Maria didn't speak. She only nodded once, solemnly, and then she began to fade, first her feet, then her hands. Her face lingered last, softer now, peaceful, almost grateful. "Rest," Isadora whispered. Maria vanished, the altar crumbled, and Isadora fell. She awoke to fluorescent lights and the hum of air conditioning, the school infirmary. A nurse gasped. "She's awake, she's back." Voices flooded the room, teachers, students, the principal, her mother. Tears, relief, confusion. But none of them knew where she had been. Luana sat beside her bed, her eyes red, but clear. "You saved me," she said. Isadora smiled faintly. She saved herself. I just showed her how. The school closed the second-floor bathroom permanently. The mirror was removed. No one talked about Maria. No one remembered the terror, not the full depth of it. It became another rumor, another story. But Isadora remembered. And every night before she went to bed, she checked every mirror in her house because one of them, one small antique hand mirror she never recalled owning, still pulsed faintly, in the dark, waiting. For the next few weeks, things at São Bento School settled into an eerie calm. Teachers resumed lessons, students laughed in the corridors again, and the second-floor bathroom was officially sealed off with drywall and paint, erased as though it had never existed. But Isadora couldn't forget, and neither could the mirror. First, it was subtle, a flicker of movement in her peripheral vision when she passed the hallway outside the library, a shadow behind her reflection in the window pane. At home, her mother claimed the antique hand mirror had been thrown out with the trash, but Isadora found it again 2 days later, sitting neatly on her desk. No one had put it there. She began waking up with bruises. Small at first, like the marks of fingers gripping her forearms. Then larger, on her thighs, her ribs, her back. She wore long sleeves even in the heat, unable to explain the blue and yellow blooms across her skin. Luana noticed. "You look worse, every day," she whispered one morning in the chapel. "You said it was over." "It was," Isadora said, voice brittle. But something came back. Her reflection began to act differently. In the school's bathroom mirrors, in the black glass of her unplugged television, even in the shallow puddle after a storm, her image would linger half a second too long. It would blink too late, or smile when she wasn't, and then it spoke. Not with words, with thoughts, whispers. "We are one now. You let me in. Let go." Isadora stopped sleeping. She stopped eating. By the end of the third week, her eyes were hollow, her lips dry and cracked. Her teachers called home. Her mother wept. Luana tried to stay close, but even she began to feel the change. "You're not you anymore," she said softly, and Isadora laughed. Not with humor, but with something else, something darker, something ancient, something that had once lived behind glass. The security footage from Sao Bento started glitching. At first, the school chalked it up to outdated systems. Cameras fuzzed out at random, skipped frames, or recorded long hours of nothing but static. But then the patterns began. Every day between 2:17 and 2:19 p.m., the camera in the south hallway would go black. Only that hallway, every time. When the IT tech reviewed the footage in slow motion, he found something, a figure, not walking, gliding. The face was distorted, blurred even in the freeze frame. The outline of a school uniform, long dark hair, a pale hand trailing across the lockers as it passed. The school principal dismissed it publicly. Privately, he ordered the camera removed. But students noticed. Books began falling from shelves with no explanation. Lockers slammed shut with no one nearby. One student claimed she saw a girl standing alone in the hallway who vanished when approached, her eyes completely black. Luana began keeping a journal. "She's spreading," she wrote. "I don't think it's just Isadora anymore. I think she's inside the building, the walls, the wires. The mirrors were just the beginning." At night, Luana heard tapping, not from the windows, from her phone screen, and when she picked it up, just for a second, her own reflection looked back at her with a wide, unfamiliar grin. She dropped the phone. It cracked. The tapping stopped, but it never really stopped. The teachers didn't speak of it, but the students knew. Something was watching from the halls. Principal Adamar was a man of structure. He believed in order, logic, rules. He didn't believe in ghosts until the day he locked himself in his office and never came out. It was a Friday morning when the secretary knocked on his door for the third time. No answer. She assumed he was on a call. But by noon, there were over a dozen missed appointments. Parents waiting, teachers confused. Finally, they forced the door open. He was still seated at his desk, but his face was frozen mid-scream, eyes wide, mouth open, one hand clutching the edge of his desk so hard that blood had dried beneath his fingernails. The room was ice cold despite the heat outside, and every reflective surface, his computer monitor, his framed diploma, the window, had shattered. The coroner said it was a stroke. The teachers accepted it. The students didn't. Luana heard the real story from a janitor. The surveillance camera in the hallway outside Adamar's office had been reviewed. It showed no one entering the room, no one leaving. But in the moments before the screen went dark, a shadow passed behind the frosted glass panel in the office door, and then something appeared in the reflection. Not on the glass. Inside it, a pale hand pressed gently to the inside of the window. And then, crack. The tape ended. Luana tore out that day's journal page and burned it. But still, she wrote more. "Maria's not done," she scrawled in frantic ink. "She's not gone. She's growing, feeding on fear, and something inside Isadora has changed completely. It's not possession, it's cohabitation. After the funeral, Donna Eliza dragged Isadora to church. She didn't ask. She didn't negotiate. She simply grabbed her daughter by the wrist, pulled her into a dress, and drove straight to the cathedral downtown. The old one. The one with saints carved into every corner and incense thick enough to choke. Father Mateus greeted them with a smile that faltered the moment he looked into Isadora's eyes. He led them into a private room. Lit candles recited verses. Isadora didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't speak. When he reached for the vial of holy water, her chair screeched across the tile. Moved back not by her, but something else. The priest crossed himself. Whispered in Latin, her lips moved at the same time, perfectly synced, repeating his words, mocking them. He stopped. "This is not a demon," he said carefully. "Not in the traditional sense. This is something else. Older, angrier." Donna Eliza wept. "Can you help her?" The priest looked at Isadora again. Her gaze pierced through him. "I don't think anyone can." That night, Isadora sat alone in her room, facing the hand mirror again. It had returned to her desk. She hadn't touched it. In its reflection, Maria's face shimmered in and out, sometimes smiling, sometimes weeping, and sometimes it was her own face. Smeared with blood, grinning from ear to ear. Luana had always been impulsive. But what she did next wasn't impulsive, it was desperate. She skipped school, took a bus across town to the only place she hadn't tried, a spiritualist center rumored to handle hauntings. The woman she met there wore white robes and spoke little. But when Luana showed her a photo of Isadora, the woman's face paled. "That one is marked." "Can you remove it?" Luana asked. "No. But you can bind it. Temporarily." Luana returned that night with chalk, herbs, candles, and instructions she barely understood. She convinced Isadora to come to her house. "Just for a night," she said. "Please, I need you." Isadora agreed, but she didn't ask why. In Luana's basement, she drew a circle on the concrete floor, symbols around it, lit candles at each cardinal point. Isadora stood in the center, passive, almost amused. Luana began the incantation. "Spirits of the veil, hear me. Bind what clings, silence what screams." Isadora flinched. The lights flickered. She smiled. "You think she'll let you?" Isadora whispered. "You think I'm not already gone?" Luana choked back fear. Continued the ritual. Threw the herbs into the flame. The mirror on the wall shattered. Isadora screamed, a sound not hers. Deeper, older, layered with countless voices. The basement shook. Then, silence. Isadora collapsed. When she woke, she wept. "I heard her," she whispered. "I heard all of them." Luana wrapped her in a blanket. The binding had worked, but only just, and only for now. In the days that followed, Isadora tried to live normally. She attended class. She answered her mother's questions. She even smiled at jokes. But the mirror never left her. She could feel it beneath her skin like a second pulse. And when she stood too close to glass, her reflection sometimes didn't look back. Luana kept checking in, constantly asking how she felt, watching her eyes too long, waiting for a change. Isadora always gave the same answer. "I'm fine." She wasn't. The bruises returned, only this time they weren't blue. They were black, deep. They formed a pattern, a symbol. It stretched across her stomach in lines and angles she didn't recognize. The final mark. She dreamed of Maria every night. Not the vengeful ghost, the girl. Maria stood in a room full of mirrors. In each one, a different version of her died a different death. Drowned, burned, buried, forgotten. "I was never finished," Maria said. Isadora woke up with blood in her mouth. At school, she passed the music room and heard a piano playing. No one was inside. On the board was a single word, scrawled in red chalk: soon. When she lifted her shirt that night, the mark had grown, not a symbol anymore. A face. Maria's. Chapter 6. The Broken Girl. The morning after the piano incident, the school was different. Everyone knew something was coming. The walls felt tighter, the lights dimmer, whispers spread like infection. And Isadora. She was no longer just a mystery, she was a threat. 2 students transferred without warning. A teacher requested a leave of absence. Rumors spiraled that she was cursed, that she was a witch, that she was possessed by something too old to name. The head counselor called her into the office. He was kind, too kind. The way people speak to someone they don't understand and don't want to provoke. "You've been through a lot, Isadora," he said gently. "Would you feel safer studying at home?" She didn't answer, because the mirror behind his desk showed him with no face. She stood and left without a word. Luana tried to protect her. She stood by her side in the halls, snapped at anyone who whispered behind cupped hands. But even Luana couldn't shield her forever. One day, someone wrote a message on Isadora's locker in chalk: "Get out." Another left a cracked mirror in her backpack. She walked to class with her head held high, but inside, something crumbled. She started to see Maria more frequently now, not in mirrors, in people, in the twitch of a teacher's eye, in the sideways glance of a stranger on the bus, in her mother's reflection, just for a moment. Smiling when she shouldn't have been, Maria was no longer trapped. She was inside the world, and inside Isadora. Luana found it by accident. She was in the old records room, searching for yearbooks to distract herself, when she noticed a loose tile behind a row of archived textbooks. Curiosity got the better of her. She pulled the tile away and reached into the dusty gap behind it. Her fingers brushed leather. A journal. The cover was brittle, the pages yellowed. Inside, the handwriting was neat, almost obsessively so. The entries began in 1962. They were written by Maria dos Santos. Luana's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. "They whisper when they think I can't hear. They say I bring bad luck, that my father died because of me. The priest won't look me in the eye anymore. I think he's afraid. Or ashamed. I only wanted to be seen, to be understood, but the more I speak, the more they hate me." Page after page, Maria poured her pain onto the paper. The final entry stopped Luana cold. "I am not afraid of dying. I am afraid of being forgotten. Let them bury me in silence. I will return in reflection. If the world will not see me, it will fear me." Luana snapped the book shut. This wasn't just a ghost story. This was a manifesto. She ran to find Isadora. When she arrived at her house, Isadora was in her room, staring at the mirror. Her eyes were glassy, distant. Luana held up the diary. "I found her journal. You need to read it." Isadora turned her head slowly. "I already have." Luana's heart dropped. "How?" Isadora smiled, softly, sadly. "She showed me." The mirror pulsed faintly behind her. Luana didn't sleep that night. She sat on the floor of her room with the journal open in her lap, trying to make sense of what she had read, of what Isadora had become. The next morning, she returned to Isadora's house. The door was unlocked. Inside, the house was silent. Too silent. She called out. No response. She found Isadora in the attic. The walls were covered in mirror shards, each placed like a ritual. Some cracked, some fogged. One showed Luana's face. Another showed Isadora asleep in the attic, though she stood right in front of it. "I know everything now," Isadora said without turning around. "Then tell me." Isadora reached for a mirror shard. Maria was never supposed to haunt. She was supposed to warn. Her curse was twisted, made cruel. Something used her grief, amplified it, used her. A priest, a ritualist. He bound her soul to the mirror not to protect the world, but to hide her, silence her. Her pain fueled the binding, but over time, pain becomes rage. Luana walked carefully toward her, and now she's unbound. The mirror shards around the room shimmered. Isadora looked at Luana, but she's not alone anymore. The air thickened. Luana backed away. "What does that mean?" Isadora stepped forward. Her voice was calm but layered. Two tones, speaking as one. "It means we're not waiting in mirrors anymore." She smiled, and every mirror in the attic smiled back. Luana didn't know where the idea came from. Maybe it was desperation, maybe instinct, maybe Maria herself. But as she left Isadora's attic, one phrase echoed over and over in her mind: "Unseal the first scar. Break the glass from the inside." She scoured Maria's journal again, looking for anything that resembled a counter-ritual. Most entries were filled with grief, rage, and memories, but on the final page, a message was scribbled in a different. Hand Sharper hurried. "The mirror can be reversed. If it bound once, it can release. Fire, voice, blood, reflection, all four are needed. At the place where it began." Luana took a deep breath. The place where it began. The second-floor bathroom. It was sealed, but Luana knew a way in, the old service access through the janitor's corridor. That night, she snuck in with a lighter, a shard of mirror, and a small blade. The bathroom was dark, still, cold. The mirror was gone, but the wall where it once hung pulsed faintly, like skin over a wound. She placed the mirror shard against it, lit the flame, cut her palm, let the blood drip. Then she spoke. "Maria dos Santos, I call you not to trap you, not to bind you, but to free you. You were a girl, not a ghost. A voice, not a curse. Come back." The wall trembled, the mirror shard pulsed, and then it shattered. A scream tore through the room. Not from Maria, from Isadora. Somewhere far away, she dropped to her knees, clutching her chest. The binding was breaking. Maria was being released, but not without cost. The fire started in the second-floor bathroom. That much was certain. How it spread so fast, no one could explain. The alarm didn't go off. The sprinklers failed. Within minutes, thick black smoke poured down the stairwells like a flood. Students screamed and scrambled. Teachers ushered children toward the exits. Emergency lights blinked uselessly in the chaos. Somewhere in the confusion, someone swore they saw a girl in white standing in the smoke, untouched by flame, her eyes gleaming red. Isadora was in the library when it happened. She felt it in her chest, the tearing, like something had broken free inside her. She gasped, doubled over, and when she looked up, the mirrors around the reading room began to crack. One by one, quietly, as if in reverence. Luana found her outside, barefoot, covered in soot. Her eyes were blank. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was two voices again. "She's free." The fire destroyed the entire wing. No one died, but several were injured. The school was shut down indefinitely. News reporters speculated faulty wiring. The head of facilities resigned. But the students whispered a different story. That São Bento was cursed. That someone, had finally claimed it. Luana kept the journal. She moved it to her aunt's house in another town, buried it under floorboards. Isadora stopped speaking for a while, but every now and then, in moments of stillness, she would hum a tune no one recognized, a lullaby from another. Time and mirrors. They always trembled when she walked past. 2 months passed. The ruins of São Bento were fenced off. Yellow tape fluttered in the breeze. Charred walls stood like tombstones, silent and black. City officials debated what to do with the land. Some proposed rebuilding. Others insisted on tearing it down. No one mentioned the mirrors. Isadora and her mother moved away to a new town, a new school, a new beginning. But some things don't stay behind. At her new school, Isadora made no friends. She spoke little. She walked the halls with quiet eyes, always glancing at reflections. Her new teachers described her as polite, smart, distant, until one of them disappeared. The only clue left behind was a cracked, compact mirror on the teacher's desk. The students whispered again. About her, about something behind her eyes. Luana visited once. They met at a cafe, tried to talk about anything else, but the silence between them was thick. Before Luana left, she asked, "Is it really over?" Isadora didn't answer. She just smiled. Later that night, Luana checked her bathroom mirror, and for a brief moment, she saw a hallway behind her and a girl in white. Waiting. Chapter 7. Blood Remembers. Years passed. The story of São Bento faded into urban legend. The burned wing was demolished. The surviving structure reopened as a technical school. Most students knew nothing about what had happened. But some, those who had been there, never forgot. Isadora lived quietly. She finished school, took night classes, found work at a used bookstore near the outskirts of town. Her mother stopped asking questions. The silence between them was now comfortable, necessary. But mirrors still watched her. She never kept one at home. Covered the reflective glass on the microwave with paper, brushed her hair with her back to the windows, and still, sometimes, she caught movement in the edges of her vision. A flutter of white, a smudge that looked like a hand. She never looked too closely until the child arrived. It was a rainy Tuesday when a woman walked into the bookstore with her daughter. The girl was maybe 9, quiet, curious, with large dark eyes that didn't blink often enough. While her mother browsed, the girl wandered, straight to the old wooden mirror near the antique maps. Isadora had forgotten it was there. She watched the girl in silence as she stood before the glass, head tilted. Then the girl reached up and touched the surface, whispered something Isadora couldn't hear. The mirror fogged. Isadora stood, walked toward her. "What did you say?" The girl turned, smiled. "She remembers you." And just for a moment, her eyes flashed black. The old wooden mirror was gone the next day. Isadora checked the corner by the antique maps 3 times. Nothing. She asked her manager, who shrugged. "We never had a mirror there." But she remembered it, clearly. The carved edges, the fogged glass, and the little girl. That night, she dreamed of São Bento. Not the burned ruin, but whole again. Silent. Empty. Except for mirrors, lined down the holes, mounted above the classroom chalkboards hanging from the ceiling. Every one of them showed a different version of her, sleeping, screaming, laughing, drowning. She awoke with blood on her fingertips, not hers. The next week, a package arrived at the bookstore with no return address. Inside, a compact mirror. Its glass was black, and etched into the back was a single word, Volta Return. Isadora locked it in a drawer. But the next morning, it was back in her coat pocket. She knew what it meant. Maria hadn't finished, and neither had she. The compact mirror followed her everywhere, no matter where she left it. Desk drawer, trash bin, the riverbank near her apartment. It always returned. In her purse, on her nightstand, once under her pillow. She stopped trying to throw it away. Instead, she started listening. At night, if she pressed it to her chest, she could hear a heartbeat that wasn't hers. A distant thrum, echoing, calling. One evening, she held the mirror under the moonlight and whispered, "What do you want?" The glass fogged, a face formed, Maria's, half-shadowed. Behind her, dozens of other faces, girls, boys, adults, all trapped. All waiting, and one of them, Luana. "No," Isadora whispered. "No, no, no." She hadn't spoken to Luana in weeks, not since the last message, unread, not since the visit. She grabbed her phone, dialed straight to voicemail. She tried again, and again. That night, the mirror showed Luana screaming. The next morning, the news reported a missing woman from a nearby town. 23. Last seen leaving a bookstore. Isadora didn't go to work. She packed a bag, took the mirror, went back to where it all began, São Bento, or what was left of it. The school grounds were fenced off, but the foundation still stood. The basement hadn't been demolished. She climbed over the barrier, walked through the skeletal ruins and found the stairs. Down she went, back into the dark. The mirror pulsed in her hands. The basement smelled of ash and rot. Isadora moved slowly, her flashlight beam slicing through the black. Mold crept up the walls. Water pooled on the floor. The remnants of burnt furniture and shattered tile made every step treacherous. She reached the center of the basement, the place where the mirrors had once stood. Now, it was just empty space. But the mirror in her hand pulsed brighter, warmer. She knelt, placed it gently on the floor. "Maria," she whispered, "let her go. Take me instead." Nothing. The mirror remained still. Then, movement, a ripple in the air, like heat above pavement. Shapes formed around her, familiar ones. The broken frames, the tall silver edges. One by one, the mirrors returned, not physically but spectrally. Reflections hovered in the dark, shimmering outlines of what had once been. In each mirror, a soul, and in the largest one, Maria and Luana. "Please," Isadora said, voice cracking. "You were hurt, you were forgotten, but this isn't justice anymore. It's vengeance. You've become the thing they feared." Maria blinked. A tear fell down her cheek. The other souls behind her began to flicker. "Let them go," Isadora said. "End it." Maria raised her hand. The mirror shattered. Luana screamed once and was gone. The other mirrors followed one by one, exploding into dust. Souls slipping free like steam. The basement filled with wind, light, chaos. Isadora covered her face, and when she opened her eyes, there was only one mirror left. Her own. She reached out, touched it, and saw nothing. The silence that followed was not peace. It was a breath being held. The final mirror stood before Isadora, reflecting nothing. Not light, not shadow, not her. Just a black void, alive, pulsing. She stepped closer. "If this is the end," she whispered, "then show me what's left." A gust of cold wind burst from the mirror. She staggered backward as voices flooded the room, fragments of laughter, sobbing, begging. Then a shape formed, herself, but wrong. Pale, eyes black, skin cracked like porcelain, blood dripping from her hairline. Maria's voice echoed, layered over Isadora's. "You carry us all." Every girl they silenced, every scream they buried. "We are you, you are us." "Then let us rest," Isadora begged. "Please." The dark reflection tilted its head. "Only one of us can leave." The mirror cracked. A beam of light shot through the basement. Isadora screamed, hands to her head, knees buckling. But she didn't give in. She crawled to the mirror. "I'm not your prison." She pressed her palm against the glass. The reflection mirrored her, then become the key. The surface shifted, softened. She was pulled inside, and for a moment she was Maria, alone in the church, begging to be believed, buried, cold, forgotten. And then she was all of them, girls who disappeared, girls who were blamed, girls no one listened to. She screamed, not in terror, but in defiance. The mirror exploded, the blast threw her across the room. Darkness, then silence, then breathing, her own. She opened her eyes. The mirror was gone. Maria was gone. But in the corner of the room, one last shard remained. Still, watching, years later, on the edge of another city, a little girl named Clara stared at the mirror in her grandmother's house. She was 8, bright, quiet, and drawn to the strange oval mirror framed in black wood, tucked into the hallway like it had been there forever. Her mother, Isadora, watched from the kitchen. Her heart still beat a little faster every time she saw Clara pause too long in front of a reflection. But for years, nothing happened. Until tonight, Clara had a nightmare. She came into Isadora's room sobbing, saying she heard singing. A song she didn't know but felt like she should. Isadora followed her back to the hallway. The mirror had fogged over. She stared at it, eyes wide. "It's her, isn't it?" Clara whispered. Isadora nodded, slowly. "Yes." "She's sad." "Yes." Clara reached into her pajama pocket and pulled out a single shard of glass. "She said I have to choose." Isadora dropped to her knees. "No, no, baby, that's not your choice. That was mine. It's over." Clara looked at her mother, tears in her eyes. "But she's still hurting." Isadora shook her head. "She can't have you." Clara stepped forward, placed the shard against the mirror. "I'll stay with her, so you don't have to." "Clara, no." The mirror pulsed. Clara's hand was already through, and Isadora knew Maria was never after her. She had been waiting for a daughter. Chapter 8. The Last Reflection. The house was silent. Isadora stood alone in the hallway, staring at the mirror, where Clara had vanished. Her hands trembled, fingers smeared with blood from pounding the glass until her knuckles split, but the mirror remained whole, cold, still. There was no scream, no sound, no flash of light. Clara had simply stepped through, and the mirror had taken her. For the first time since São Bento, Isadora felt helpless. She didn't cry. Couldn't. Something inside her had shattered the moment Clara disappeared. She moved slowly back to her room, her legs heavy, her breath shallow. The compact mirror sat on her nightstand, waiting. She picked it up. Whispers erupted instantly, hundreds of voices. Clara's was not among them. "What do you want?" she begged. "You took her. What more do you want from me?" The mirror's glass began to swirl. Images flashed. Maria's face, the burned halls of São Bento, the floating mirrors, the faces of the lost. But there was something new. A girl, Clara, not screaming, not afraid, walking among the mirrors, touching each one and turning them dark. "She's not yours," Isadora whispered. "She's not part of this." But even as she said it, she realized it wasn't true. Clara had been born into the story, born from it. She was the final link, and now she was the ending. The mirror disappeared the next morning. Isadora awoke to an empty wall where it had hung for years. No trace, no shard, not even a smudge. She searched the house top to bottom, but it was gone, and Clara didn't return. Days turned to weeks. Police were called, posters were printed, search parties were formed, but Isadora didn't help. She knew better. Clara wasn't missing. She had crossed over, and now the mirror, her mirror, was moving again. Reports began surfacing. First, in a small village, a girl claimed to hear singing from a cracked hand mirror. Her family burned it. Then, in a city across the state, a boy went blind after looking into a bathroom mirror at school. He said he saw someone smiling at him, someone with his face. Isadora tracked the incidents obsessively. Each one marked a location where the mirror had been. Each one followed the same rhythm: reflection, fear, silence. She started traveling, quietly, anonymously, to every place touched by the mirror. She didn't speak. She simply stood before each glass and whispered one word: Clara. Sometimes the mirror trembled, sometimes it cracked. Once it laughed. But Isadora kept going, because the mirror was still spreading, still searching, and she would follow it until it brought her back to her daughter, or to the end. The town of Pedra Clara had one elementary school, one cafe, and no history of strange occurrences, until the day Mariana Mendez, age 10, disappeared from the girls' bathroom during recess. Her classmates said she was last seen standing in front of the mirror, chanting something they didn't understand. 3 words. Isadora read the report 3 days later. She boarded a bus that night. The school was already closed, locked down under investigation. But Isadora didn't need access. She only needed the mirror. It was still there. Mounted crookedly above the cracked sink, its glass fogged with fingerprints that hadn't come from children. She placed her hand against it. The surface pulsed, and for the first time in a long time, Isadora saw Clara, older, pale, beautiful, and not alone. Maria stood beside her, but it wasn't Maria who smiled. It was Clara. She raised her hand, palm to palm. Isadora whispered, "I found you." The mirror darkened, the hallway lights exploded, and then everything went still. The explosion of light lasted only seconds. When Isadora opened her eyes, the mirror was whole again. Clara was gone. No trace, no reflection, just the blank dark glass. The school remained quiet. Not a single soul stirred. Isadora turned away. She knew what came next. She had seen it before. A new town, a new mirror, a new girl, a new name. And the ritual would begin again. 3 words spoken in fear or jest. A flicker of power awakened. A smile in the glass, because Maria was never just one girl. She was the echo of all the forgotten, the wounded, the silenced. And now Clara was with her, no longer a child, no longer innocent, but remembered. The mirror would move on, carried in whispers, passed in stories, shared at sleepovers and dares in dark hallways, until the day a girl would look at her reflection and wonder if it had blinked, and speak 3 words: Maria Sangrenta venha. The glass would fog, and somewhere far away, a girl in white would open her eyes. They thought it was just a legend. They thought it was just a game. But Maria Sangrenta is more than a ghost. She is memory. She is vengeance. And she never forgets. Who calls her name? If this story kept you awake, whispering shadows into the corners of your room, if you're still glancing at your mirror, wondering what's hiding behind your reflection, then subscribe to Crazy Real Horror Stories, because the darkness is only beginning. New true horror stories every week, based on real legends, told like you've never heard before. Click subscribe and join us before the next tale finds you first, because some stories aren't fiction, some stories stare back.